Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 3WG. We're so happy to have you here today. We're going to turn it over to Jake, who's going to do an in-depth evaluation of our rain gauge network, how we utilize it, what the data can be powerful to, and how you're going to be using it during the phase 2 consent order agreements. And we'd like to thank Alakazam, who replaced the entire system in 2022. And now it's very powerful, and we want to make sure you're using it often. Take it away, Jake.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go through an overview of the Three Rivers Rainfall Tool, do an intro, go through some terminology, do a bit of a live demo, simple data download, get into some advanced features that are available. And as Annie mentioned, how does this work with our phase 2 consent orders and things like that? And then we'll go through some questions and comments. I wanted to start with the Three Rivers Wet Weather homepage. I would say anybody that's, part of the 3WG community, you should have a login for this website. If you're unfamiliar with it, that's fine. I think it's worth exploring this website, getting a login from Annie from Three Rivers. There's a lot of good resources on here dating back to, the start of these orders, back to 2008 and even before then, as part of the RCS FMP. So all of that information has been populated on this website. And I think Three Rivers has done a good job of organizing that and making it easy for us to utilize it. Specifically, I wanted to go into MDS first, the Municipal Data Support. I'm already logged in here, but for right now, our concern is the phase 2 consent orders generally. So just to show you, how this is set up, when you click on more info, you get your mapping tools. So Exhibit A would be for combined sewer communities, Exhibit B for separate sanitary communities. Even if you're hybrid, you're using both. If you're a separate sanitary community that has neighbors that are combined, this Exhibit A Explorer is useful as well. But as you'll see in here, all the meetings that we've held, presentations that were done by year. If you're combined sewer community, here's language from the orders. Exhibits from the orders, things like that. All the presentations. These are all very helpful. There's all separate, and then even back historical, phase 1 municipal consent orders, back to the feasibility study working group, all that stuff's in here. So
for lateral inspections.
Yeah, that's a good point. Recently we were asked about, lateral inspection ordinance examples. Those are on here as well. So just wanted to show you guys that. So now we can jump into the rainfall tool. I'll go back to the Three Rivers homepage. And down here is a tab for the rain gauge system. So when you log into that, this was, yeah, same login, gets you access to all this. This was what the original tool looked like. There've been upgrades since then, and even upgrades to the actual devices out in the field. I think Annie or David mentioned it was 2022 they replaced all the rain gauges. So that was a pretty big effort, and every one of these raindrops is a rain gauge on here, and we'll get into the mapping tool and you can see where they're located, but there's 33 that are operated and maintained by Three Rivers with the help of Alakazam. So when you go down through here, this start the rainfall tool will get you to the actual site. Hopefully. They're the one that I already pulled up. So the internet's lagging here, I think, on this end. That's why we're having trouble. But when you go to the site, this is the pop-up that comes up when you first arrive. Now, this is different than a normal disclaimer pop-up window that you would get when you go to a website where you're just trying to find where you can click through and close it. Normally, that's how I've gone about it when I get to the website, but as I was putting together this presentation, I realized how much information is in this window that can help you out with questions and explains where the data comes from, how it's analyzed, evaluated, and how you get the data. There's a lot here. So first, just on the overview end, here, we stayed here. This app is made possible with the support from View and Associates, Alcasan, DataWise, Civic Mapper put a lot of this functionality together, and Three Rivers as well. There's a pretty complex network of how this all intertwines. I know we have diagrams, things like that, if you're interested. I'm not going to go into that detail. I did want to say, though, that there's several people in this room, and I'm sure there's a lot more online that know a lot more about how this was put together, how it works, even the functionality of it. I'm still learning, as David mentioned. Putting together this presentation, I learned a lot of other functions that this tool provides. But just here in this pop-up, it tells you the different types of data. We're getting real-time rainfall from actual rain gauge locations that were shown on that map. There's 33 Three Rivers gauges. There's the NexRad radar pixels, so that's radar rainfall, and those are all near real time. We can go back in our system and look at historical rain gauge data. This was actually QA/QC data by Alcasan. You can go and see back to 2001, I believe, some of this historical rain gauge data. And then we have calibrated radar rainfall data. So this is taking both the radar pixel data and the rain gauge data, adjusting the radar data with the actual measured precip. This is QA/QC data, and then View provides that data for us for the entire county.
Jake, that calibrated radar rainfall, once that's QA/QC, it's provided in a pixel format. Can you tell us what a pixel format is?
Yeah, and I'll get into some examples of that, because we're going to dig a little deeper on that. But I think it's 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer square is basically what it comes down to. There's 2,313 pixels. So I'll get into some more detail. One thing I wanted to mention is down here at the bottom. So this is on the main first pop-up that you see. It says need something more powerful. We're going to get back to this later in the presentation, but this is kind of a separate tool on View's website that we all can get access to that provides a little bit more functionality.
And it's important for modelers that more advanced feature, because it takes you to View website and you have to get a login credential from View.
Me,
You get that from Annie.
but yes.
Yeah.
Yes, keep going.
But they have a neat tool there for modelers, and it's called the rainfall data in SWIM format. So if you are not a modeler, if you just wanted to see historical rainfall or current rainfall, you don't have to worry about that. But modelers, shouldn't be spending too much time downloading the raw data and converting it to SWIM format using spreadsheets or other programs like SOAP. Okay? Don't do that. Don't waste your time, because this tool will automatically convert the raw data or the calibrated data into SWIM format. So that saves you a lot of time.
Yeah, there's other
It's in there.
programs.
Yeah, and not everybody knows about.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
So just to like balance the two programs, the, this GitHub site, which is the rainfall, is available to the public. So if you wanted to talk to your citizens about, hey, you want to know how much it rained, or wow, I bet you want to know why the creek flooded, or hey, did you get a basket? You want to know how much rainfall? That is a public tool, right? So every single person on the planet, if they have the internet, they can get into that tool. Whereas the View additional tool that has important modeling pieces, that is only for, if you're already approved for MDS, then you're the type of person who's allowed to get into View. So municipal managers, engineers, staff, so elected officials, if you're associated with the municipality, you're allowed for that View technology as well.
EPA swim.
Yeah. EPA swim or PC swim, they are compatible, so they use the same format. The both.
Yeah, we'll get deeper into that as well. There's a bunch of formats that they helped out with. Okay, so the other thing this provides, and I specifically wanted to read this. This talks about the methods of how this works. And all right, we have our 33 rain gauges. I think there's a few additional ones that are utilized by View as well. But you know, those physically measure the precip that is falling over that device at that specific location. But on the other side of that, we have radar, and this is what's often used in weather reports. It doesn't measure the rainfall directly, but rather it detects the intensity of microwave energy reflected by the raindrops, called reflectivity. And then through use of a mathematical formula, that reflectivity of the raindrops can be converted by the radar system into rainfall estimates for a particular area. And, you know, both of these measuring methods, you know, they're not perfect, but when you combine them, you know, that's what gets us to a highly accurate and valuable source of rainfall that can be calculated over a large area. So, you know, really we're turning 33 rain gauges and the one NexRad system into 2,313 rain gauge locations is generally what it boils down to. So it's pretty impressive. And I think from one of the prior View presentations, they talked about Three Rivers being one of the first that implemented a system like that. You know, and starting back in 2001. So, you know, the time we've had these rain gauges in, the consistency of how the process works, and then combine that with new equipment, a new and upgraded tool, you know, we've got some powerful stuff here.
Take care of the air. Rainfall become, you know, like rain gauge. Precipitation like 3 inches of rain a day. Or adjacent area, no rain. Got that air was deep.
Yeah, that's the idea. And Glenn's question is basically, all right, if you have rain gauge over here 2 miles away is your project area, or a mile away is your project area, and it's a localized precip event, you see all this precip at the gauge, but you're not seeing any at the project site. Yeah, that's what I think the radar is intended to help out with.
Maybe that problem. Venus spoke to the rain gauge. Doesn't show any flow, you know, and May.
And that's what's nice about, you'll see there's different ways of downloading this data. You can download just that individual pixel. You can download the rain gauge itself and you get the raw data. You can download a variety of pixels and then aggregate that information. There's different ways of looking at it to try and explain, hey, why did my flow monitor pop off like this, and work through that. And I'll get a little bit further here. I'll get into the tool first, but so just these other tabs, this shows you how to get the data. It provides descriptions and you know, different ways of getting the data together. Every time step you download, any piece of data is going to come with a source description. That's going to tell you, hey, was this actual calibrated radar rainfall data, from view, it's already been QA/QC'd and post-processed and all that. That will be the R. And another term we'll see throughout this is GARR, and that stands for Gauge Adjusted Radar Rainfall. So that's synonymous with the calibrated radar rainfall data, and that's kind of the end product, I would say. And then, sometimes it's something less than that, whether it was derived from weighting based on 1 rain gauge, 2 rain gauges, 3 rain gauges, things like that. No data was collected, or is this the actual raw real-time radar data or raw real-time rain gauge data? And another note, Glenn, for to utilize this calibrated radar rainfall data, it's not available immediately. This is like 30 to 60 days out after it's all post-processed and area weighted based on the rain gauges.
But you can see real-time data from the rain gauges. It just hasn't been that processed in QA/QC.
Yes, I think there's an automatic process that, and maybe that probably that answers in here, but I think there's kind of an automatic QA/QC process, and then at the end of the month, then there's a secondary, actual QA/QC technician going through and making adjustments as needed. Also in here's a webinar that was done in 2021. That was the first time this upgraded tool was introduced, and Christian from Civic Mapper put that together, and that was a basis for a lot of my presentation today. So it's nice that that's available right there. And then even as far as if you want to go under the hood to see how this is all working and put together, I don't necessarily understand that, but some people might want to go to that level. So we hit close, we get into the actual tool. And it's all map based, and you can see each one of these squares. This is an individual pixel. So it shows up on here as virtual gauge, and they all have numbers. So here's our map. Here's to the right. This is, the dates we're trying to look at. Here's where we're downloading the data. There's 3 different tabs. As Annie had mentioned, so for real-time rainfall data, if you wanted data, for a storm that occurred yesterday, you're going to be in the real-time rainfall data tab.
Just make it a square estimate where you think you're at.
So you can, it depends on your project area, what you're looking for. But if it's one, a few people from a neighborhood called, hey, we have an issue here. You go to that pixel. You want to see what kind of precip fell, a few days ago.
You do that, I can see.
And you can select as many pixels as you like, and they'll download all at the same time. From this point, or in this tab, you can also select rain gauges as well. This is basically the raw data. So if it's a storm that happened within the last few weeks, I think that you're going to be in this tab here. If
you picked on that gauge, show us what happens if it takes.
No, I can do that. So we're just downloading. This is the last 2 hours. I think you can go over here. There's some shortcuts to get, hey, I want to look past 48 hours or past month, 7 days, etc. So that's a good shortcut there. So let's look at the past 12 hours at this rain gauge, these pixels. I want it in 15-minute intervals. Get rainfall data. So that was a pretty small ask. So it's available right away, and you can view the results here.
Should never be longer than 30. Sometimes there's a glitch, but usually it's 30 days.
This is more,
This is the real-time tab.
Yeah, we're still in real time. Yeah.
that's what I think Jake had said earlier. If you get a call about like, I really had a flooding problem in my area, you might want to just look to see. If Annie, the public can see this.
Um,
And I know in creature, there was people that would go on there and look to see. But I think it goes back to what you said. That gauge is a block from here. You go 10 blocks down and there'd be no rain. So I think that's really the value of the calibrated system. But it goes into the radar or the GAR system.
I tend to think that for the instances where you have, pop-up storms, things like that, where you have complaints, where you want to get a real-time sense of, did it rain 2 inches in this general area somewhere, this morning? That's when you use this real-time aspect. If you're doing a model or you're evaluating RDII from your flow monitoring data, that's when you use, the other tab, the calibrated rainfall aspect. So they have different purposes and used for different utilities, and obviously with the QA/QC built in is intended to minimize that aspect where, if it rained here 2 pixels away and didn't rain at your flow monitoring data, hopefully that matches up better than just a real-time aspect.
A few things on this screen. This goes along with what Sam was saying with format and how you're getting the data. Right now, when you're downloading, this is what your CSV would look like. Here's your time step. So there's like post-processing that's involved in Excel to actually get this in a format that's usable. That's something we might be working on as far as the default output on this tool. Additionally, there's a graphing function that is intended to be included. That's something that I think, we might see coming here shortly. That you could just graph the data that you've just downloaded.
While we're on this screen, I wanted to note, so we were talking about searching and zooming in, or back to
Oh,
the
sorry.
screen, sorry. In the top right-hand corner of that map viewer is there, and you can type in your address, you can type in the person's address, you can type in a community, and it would fly you to that location. And, so there's that capability for you to then search in addition.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
okay. So that's real-time data. Historical, on this tab here, this is only by rain gauge. You're not downloading pixels or anything at this point. You can select the pixels as much as you want, but you're only going to get actual rain gauge data. And I'm thinking this stretches back to 2001, so you can get this historical data all the way back then.
But that's only for the gauge. That's
Yes, this is only this, and this would be QA/QC data. So right now, as we sit here today, I think we can get data to the end of December 2022. So that was QA/QC'd and provided, I think, by Alcosan.
but just for that location. Anywhere,
Any rain gauge.
just any range.
Yeah, you select by rain gauge here. I guess this is also on the real-time tab, but there's this, you can select by geography. This is another piece of the tool that we intend to make available, where you can not only select by pixel, but select by whole watersheds or meter sheds. And that functionality is actually in that advanced tool. And then moving into a calibrated radar rainfall or the GAR, GARR, this is kind of the final product. And I think right now we can get up to the end of November. So there's a little bit more of a lag on that end. So I'd say the historical rain gauge, less than 30 days. I'd say this is more on the 30 to 60 or maybe a little less. I think we've gotten more efficient at processing the data. So from here, on this tab, the calibrated radar rainfall tab, this is all pixel based. Even if you were to go to where your gauge is located, it's all pixels that you're selecting. because it's using the radar data first and then adjusting it using the rain gauges. Yes, this is kind of the final product, what we would consider the most accurate, yes. But if you're looking, right at one of these rain gauge sites and I want to know what happens on,
Right.
Castle Shannon Borough's roof, that's, pretty accurate. I would say it's an actual rain gauge at that location. Another item I wanted to mention here, besides, being able to select by date, and I tried selecting 3 years at a time and was able to download the data. I'm not sure what the limitations are and how much you can download at one time. But it seemed to meet my needs so far. Another thing we provide, and this is under historical and for calibrated radar rainfall, is this listing to select by rainfall event. So these are pre-populated rainfall events going back to 2000. I think it even goes back further than the rain gauge network, which right now it's in this list format in this tool. This is something we've considered, beefing this up a little bit, maybe providing it in a table format, providing some statistics to go along with it. For instance, you'd be able to look at, and maybe it's by rain gauge, and you could sort by inches that fell over a certain amount of time. Maybe each one of these storms is characterized by the return frequency. You could say these storms were equivalent to a 2-year design storm. You could look at only those storms. I think that's something that we're going to provide some updates to, but it does help. If you had monitoring data for 2017, you could go into this listing, go to 2017 and find, pre-populated storm events that had already occurred. And you kind of gives you a shortcut of where you want to look.
So if you had monitoring, and you want to look at like that July, that you clicked on, July 13th,
Yeah. You could pull that up, and once you select this, oh shoot. Oh, it selected it anyways. I just clicked outside of it, but it'll automatically select those dates. And then you can click where you want and download the data for that time period.
Something I find helpful is in that interval bit for people like me who aren't using it for modeling. Often I'm using to see what that total storm looked like in the region. You can define whether you want the 15-minute data or the total for that time period, so there's a couple different intervals that are available to you for how you want that data present. Because I like to have a really pretty color-coded how the rain looked throughout that entire storm on my map. Whereas this is a longer period and because it's 15, it's based on what's being recorded in those pixels. So it doesn't have the same like mapping prettiness that allows me to share that data with someone who's asking.
And hopefully there's a shortcut to kind of showing what that data looks like too on the graphing it as well.
So you could back to maybe lens thing where why is it affecting did it affect just this area of the community and not that area of the community? You could almost print some color coded system out to show the elected officials that this is how the rain falls.
Yeah.
It doesn't equally fall the same amount over the whole community.
Or even in one storm, say, hey, why did my rain garden fail? And be able to say, wow, because we got more than the design inch. And so my rain garden was designed to have overflow from that system. Here's a map, here's the color-coded aspect of that rainfall. And those storms are defined by view. So as they're going through the QA/QC of our data, view is able to pull out rain events as they occur.
And I would mention that this is just a start. This is not going to have all the precip events. If we only had, I guess I'll take a step back. The way that they define a rainfall event is that half the rain gauges in the network have to have at least 0.5 of an inch of rainfall. So 0.05 inches of rainfall have to fall on half the rain gauges. So if we, what's that?
500.
Yes.
Okay.
Um. But, okay, let's just say we had a localized storm that only hit the southern portion of the city or the county. That necessarily wouldn't show up in this listing. So that's something also to keep in mind.
Default.
0.05 inches of rainfall. Over half the, yeah. Yeah. I think that's the default. And I don't know if they go in and, all right, obviously this was a rainfall event and add those in as well. That might occur. Okay. So. Does anybody have any questions on this part of the tool before I go into some more advanced stuff?
So if you wanna just like click a bunch of pixels in the area or select a whole bunch.
I'm sorry, but,
What the question is can we show a color coded map? of
Right.
A
And then
given
go
area?
down and do
Yeah.
a
the
total.
given area, just an example, so we can see that. I'd like to see them back, actually.
Well, it's not, we didn't pick a very pretty storm, but you see that there is blue and it's
Right.
represented in, so if you had yellows and you could even see the size of
Right,
how the
right.
cloud fell. Jake just picked some very, very random.
Well,
Yeah, pick a storm.
what storm you want me to pick?
2019, the last Penn State game, where it rained 9 inches that weekend.
Very sad.
Which one am I
I
going
think
to?
it's October 6th.
Oh, yeah, that looks like a doozy.
Long duration.
All right, then make sure you're at total.
Total.
Well, so we still have the pixels selected, and that's outside of those.
Okay,
And then I think you can you do a?
select them a bunch at once.
Yeah. Yes.
Let's zoom me in.
So just pick over top of Heinz Field or something.
Yeah, I mean,
That's like
Okay, I'm just gonna pick a bunch of this area.
very random. If you're a little bit more delicate about picking. It can be a lot prettier. I just wish.
Sort of in some damage from the game.
I watched it rain and I pumped my basement out while trying to watch the football.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, and so that bottom allows you to change the differential in the coloration of the
Right.
map. But yeah, no, so,
Yeah, this thing will get improved because he mentioned that something they're working on is being able to select an area based on your meter shed or subcatchment. So we could ask them to add a municipality. So if you want to see entire borough of Green Tree, and if you want to create a map like this for the entire city, then you can just pick that municipality and you won't have to click individually on the pixels. It'll save time and it'll be more accurate.
So what are we seeing here, Jake? The pixels are,
Did you try shift?
Yeah, I tried. That just zooms me in. Christian, I know you're on here. Feel free to come on. There he is. What? Help me out here. How do I select a bunch at one time?
Do what you're doing, unfortunately, right now, just the limitation of the UI.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that is something we're looking at, and when I go to this advanced tool, I'll be able to show you a little bit more, I think, what you're looking for and probably what Annie has seen. And I think just right now, this kind of uniformly fell based on the pixels I've selected and the storm we selected.
so the left-hand column, 0.5, 5, and 10, what's that?
This enables you to change the scale.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is telling us. that
Everything was 0.5.
over those pixels, it rained more than 0.5
Yeah,
for that storm. Okay, now we're,
so we're in the range of 2 and it didn't vary that much. So I wonder if I just select.
to run it again.
But you can see what it does.
It was a big
Same-
storm.
same-
Yeah, it was just a big storm.
Yeah, I know. So click on the 10.
So it also keeps us at 2. So
Yeah, somewhere
So
between.
relatively same storm.
Yeah.
I'd say.
So, I wonder if there's anything else on this specific tool I wanted to go over. Are there any questions online or things we want to go through? Yeah, I wanted to show you guys so if we go back to here's our main screen. We go to the view tool. So this is very similar. I went to maps. So if you go back to
In order to
dashboard,
get to view, by the way, because it requires a login, you request me, I'll be dropping my email into the chat. You all are welcome to grab my card at the end if you don't already have it. You send me an email and then View will send you the link to this dashboard. This dashboard's link is not on the website. It's not something you can find there. So in order to be able to access it, you would have to save it as a bookmark, have it in your email, something along those lines.
Through it, paint. Would it track that way?
Yeah,
Rain more in than it is in.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, you can, I mean, sometimes I'll do the area I'm looking to find my rain total for that storm in that area, but then I'll actually, grab the pixels in a vertical across past where I'm looking geography wise and vertically past her, so that sometimes you can see, oh, here it's starting to peter out and see the definition of that band as it comes through the system. So a couple times even, I've gone and looked at the radar on NOAA, which is, they're really good at visualizing and making that data. I see where I should be looking, and then it's able for me to go to this data to build out. What is
Just do anything on. Rain for 10 minutes.
yeah, well, when you download the data, you'll be able to see that. So let me show you give you guys a little bit of overview of the increased functionality. So I went in here and I just selected a previous storm. This is the day I got married, actually. So I knew it rained hard all over the place. Yeah,
Field McCall.
it was nice though. It kind of split between where we got married up north, so it won't even show on this map, but there were cars floating in Grove City and we were like 20 minutes away from there and it wasn't too bad. So, but this allows you to look at a bunch of different layers. You could turn on, here's municipal boundaries, just kind of how Sam had mentioned. This is just to help you view the municipal boundaries, but here is the gauge adjusted radar rainfall by pixel for that storm. So this kind of gives you an idea of here's the variation, here's how the precip fell across the county. Here's your totals over here. So this is, the 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer squares. Each pixel gives you a total precip that fell during this time. You can see Bridgeville was hit a little harder. Less precip fell in these areas. So this just gives an idea of total precip. This doesn't get into intensity, things like that. But what's nice is you can click on a location and it shows you, during that time you selected where the precip fell, what times, and then you can look at it cumulatively. So I thought that this is a good tool to see how it fell during that storm, because otherwise you're just looking at total precip.
That gives you the timestamp and it shows you the graph how it goes up through.
Yes, and I think on the original tool we looked at, the Three Rivers tool, when we show this by graph, it'll look similar to what we're seeing here.
So is historical data available on this?
Yeah,
Let's go back to September of 04.
What
You look
dates?
at Your rain days.
Hurricane Ivan.
What was the date? Yeah, that's what I thought too. I was gonna say.
It was weekday, so we got five choices.
Oh, here, I'll just do all September. Is it loading? No, don't. I'll talk about this play button.
I was coming across the bridge, looking up on the hill, and a house was washed completely off of its foundation and fell over the hillside, down all the
September
bottom
17th.
of the hill and cave.
September 17th.
September 17th.
From the time I started across the bridge till the time I.
Did you get that, Jake? 17th.
Yeah, I'm plugged it in. It's not.
I didn't do anything. I'm sorry. And it had its deck.
It might have been too far back. I'm not positive.
It's showing 2004 though.
Is that what you said 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very strange.
Well, anyways, it can show you.
I want to show, yeah, I want to show you some more functionality, at least with, I'm going to go back to the original event I was on. But yeah, I would think that you'd be able to see that information.
But it gives you something to play with.
Let me go back here, 19. So besides just seeing the GARR, you can, by pixel, I can turn that back off and I can turn on by sheds. So this is by flow monitor sheds. And it gives you the total and the graphs for the pixels aggregated by the flow monitor sheds that were provided. So I think this is very powerful, especially when, Sam, when you're talking about modeling, things like that. If we're looking at specific areas.
And to Glenn's point, you're evaluating flow monitoring data, computing RDII or a specific Alcosan RCSFMP flow monitor area. This already aggregates all of the 1 km by km pixels in that watershed. So it's very powerful. As Sam mentioned, very, very much a time saver.
So how does,
Named by RCSFMP monitor too, so that's helpful.
so how do you pick like that monitor or whatever? Is it just kind of look at the map, or is there a way you could?
So right now, we're just in the mapping function of this, and when we get, I'll go into the data download portion, but I did want to show you guys something else too. This, and I find this is probably the thing I use most with this tool. Let me add in here. And it's the depth duration frequency grid. So this to me is synonymous with what your return interval is, or your design storm. So if you select this, adding it to the map, it's loading. But what this will show is basically by pixel how that precipitation relates to a design storm or return interval. And it gives you your grids. So not only can we get the graphs or the total precip that fell, but
That
you,
one little pocket, that one right there.
Yep.
Just in that little area.
yep. Now, from our perspective, we have clients located throughout Allegheny County. This is very helpful to me. I know, I saw a bunch of precip rolled through. I can look and see, where did it hit hard,
So if you zoom down on that, it might show you like one end of town, 100 near the other.
Yeah.
Or nothing, or nothing, right?
whatever you selected. So,
That's a,
but it gives you, you can go to, I wish it was here. there's another, there's a DDF part of the application.
We're back to
19.
Jake's wedding day.
Yeah, July, yeah. On the DDF graph here, I think you would have to select it in here and it will show you X amount of precip fell over 15 minutes or over a half hour, and that's what designated it as a 100-year design storm. For instance, you know, it could be over 24 hours, it can be over whatever duration you have. It uses the max, I guess, intensity, or however it would fall on the characterization of that. And I think it's just a, you know, a good check. And I usually use it with the real-time data. It's as a storm rolls through, I check and see, you know, is this, you know, equivalent to a design storm, you know, across the board anywhere? Or maybe a municipal manager or a resident called and complained about something happened. You can go and look and see, yeah, well, that precip that fell yesterday that caused us at your house was about a 2-year design storm. Or, hey, this is a 25-year design storm. So
That starts giving you an idea, like areas that you have potential problems.
Mhm.
Talk about 2-year design.
Yeah.
You can use it for that.
Mhm.
And you can look at consistency, like every storm we go through, say, yeah, it is not overflowing in the 2-year design,
Right.
right? It's like, it's kind of validating.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Yeah. Hey, I know in my model that this SSO doesn't register for a 2-year, 10-year, or even a 25-year. And then you looked at that area and realized, okay, a 25-year storm just hit and I didn't see any overflows. So that's good.
This we use when we talk about, okay, I had to run and basically check my SSOs and they might only pop during a X storm. I could look at this and say, yeah, I want to go make sure that one was.
Yeah. Yes.
And the other part, talking about where we left the combined sewer subcommittee meeting 2 weeks ago. As part of your 9 minimum controls, after certain rainfall events, part of your control or your best management practices, go out in the field and check your CSO discharge. Utilizing this tool, if you establish, let's say, you know, a 2-year design storm, we're gonna go out and check our CSO discharges after that level of a storm. Utilize this tool, take a look at the rainfall you had and say, yep, guys, we had a pretty good storm. Let's check our CSOs.
So is this real time or does this have to wait?
This, I'm not sure how exactly it functions, but I use it a lot for real time. So it'll automatically go and grab that real time data. But I think once you get to, you know, once the calibrated radar rainfall data is
It might
provided,
adjust
it'll go to that.
We do have a question online. I'm not, and if you want to come off mute to better describe your question, in case I butcher what we're asking, but are these area weighted? Do you know what that
Okay.
means?
This is Colin. Hopefully you're able to hear me.
Yes.
This was in regard to the RCS FMP meter sheds that you were showing. So when you show that information for a meter shed, if it is intersecting multiple pixels,
Yes.
would you say that it's an area weighted average that is being shown for a meter shed?
Yes, I think that the pixels first are weighted by the rain gauges. The radar rainfall is adjusted based on rain gauges first. Then you have our GARR for each individual pixel, and then they are area weighted together. You know, I'm guessing all the pixels in this area are selected, and then that's what's good. Sam, if you can.
Area weighted is needed only when different polygons, in this case, pixels are of different area. Here, each pixel is the same size, 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. So there is really no need for area weighting in this case.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, surely. And is this shapefile for the meter shed polygons in public domain? Like, can we get a copy of it?
Yeah, I would go as far as to say, when you go to download this data, so we'll go there next, you can download the shapefile with the data. And it gives you the entire shapefile for the meter sheds.
Great, thank you.
One other thing I wanted to show while we were here is that you can also add a shapefile to this, which is another powerful tool. I don't want to break anything right now.
Yeah.
I already
You
hit too many
can't-
buttons. Well, so what you can do is, and it's working on it right now. It's going to pop up a box. It's basically a, when you're adding an attachment to an email, it's the same thing. It'll pop up that box. It'll look in your file folders and it'll direct you, and you can browse to where you have a shapefile, and then you add the shapefile into this interface, whether it's all your sanitary sewers, for instance. If you wanted to see your whole sewer network, you can show it in there. Or, hey, I know I had issues at this location, this location, and this location in my municipality, and you have that in GIS, you can load that into here, and that will help you see which pixels or which sewer sheds you want to download. So another powerful thing, I think it's helpful. Here it is right here. But I'm not going to go any further with this. Come on now. Okay.
It
Thanks.
looks like you did break it.
So I want to add, in conversations I've had with you, when Jake was talking about, and Jason was talking about CSO and 9 minimum controls and checking after storms, and Dave was talking about SSOs. The view tool allows you to set up alarms that would send to your cell phone or your email if you wanted to actually have an alarm sent to you that's saying this storm just occurred. And it's a tool that you has mentioned that we're not at Three Rivers or Wet Weather, we haven't been utilizing a ton. So just like saying that that's available, that you could have an alert telling you that something in specific pixel areas was occurring is a function of view. So if we
So
want,
we-
as a region, to
we will
get
be
more
sending-
information, yeah.
We'll be sending out something on
Yeah.
how to do that.
Yeah, because I think that might be something you all are, maybe you're not
'Cause
checking.
I know Joe Day can't wait to get that on his phone. So he can-
Every storm.
So he can know what that is, but we'll send out, we'll talk to you, we'll get a little step-by-step on how you can do that. Then that kind of answers our questions about your SSO areas, and maybe, try to get as much as we can.
And I was, along the same lines, I was also thinking that it looks like as if we are trying to duplicate View's capability into our mapping rain rates, not rain rates,
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Rainfall.
rainfall
Yeah.
too. Is it necessary? Could be, because View is under contract with us. And it looks like that extra layer of security they have built for another login, is that necessary?
I've had some conversations with you. They actually, and I hope I'm not speaking hearsay, when we were establishing and coming up to with the brand new gauges, they expressed a lot of concern actually, because in no other place in the United States is rainfall, the actual real-time rainfall available to the public. They don't normally do that, and that's something they're actually very uncomfortable with. There's a lot of reasons that they might state why that is. And so because Three Rivers Wet Weather was adamant that we wanted to have a public-facing version of that data, it allows us to have a safe version of that data facing the public, and then the View additional tool. So that's actually, the View has said
There
that.
could be a way though, Sam, that maybe, I think what you're getting at, we can still have a password protected, but under our MDS.
Right, it's not public by any means, because you still need to log in as
Yeah,
an
so what-
MDS.
Oh, okay, okay, as long as you
So
mean
what
that.
Sam is saying under the MDF, like,
Yeah.
I just need one password.
Right, but I'm thinking like, why would Civic Mapper be reprogramming what View has already
Yeah,
accomplished?
that's kind of my notes I have here.
Okay, right. So could we have, could we have Civic Mapper work with View and figure something out so that, we can see all this capability into our main
Right.
rainfall tool?
And I think part of that is the, the sewer shed weighted rainfall data is doing just that. Where, the shapefile, the service area associated with that monitor,
Yeah,
between the two firms, it was weighted to provide that. I think that's,
I think what we need,
In
one,
progress.
what you're saying, is one place. That's what we're trying to get.
Yeah, I mean, there may be licensing issues, there may be.
Yeah.
Intellectual property issues, but
If I remember correctly, View's biggest concerns was security,
Oh.
and I can't, like a national security
look
type
into
mentality. I don't remember, I guess I probably have notes on it. I could figure out exactly what their concerns were at the time, but. Yeah, they expressed that they thought that, this should only be something that was utilized by the professionals. And so our public version is the Civic Mapper website.
I was reminded through this conversation, you got to be careful with that real-time data. You have to realize that it has not been QA/QC'd. It's raw data, so it's one thing to mention.
that would
might
be
a little
more of a
bit
concern than national security.
tricky.
Because the liability associated with, sharing data which has not been QA/QC. And, if somebody's basement got flooded and they came to this website and they just said that there was hardly any rainfall, why my basement was flooding, so you gotta, fix my house.
Yep.
So, once the data was QA/QC, we found that there was plenty of rainfall. So avoid those kind of headaches, I think.
Yeah.
There's disclaimers, I think, throughout when you're getting the data on the real time end, but yes, please
Well,
keep that in
everybody
mind.
Joe and Marty, when they.
Yeah.
They do, so. Yeah, being in the public.
Get it, Narda?
Management for 30 some years, they're all experts on it.
While I'm on this page, one more thing that I'm not gonna touch because I'm scared to break things. I think, and Christian had talked about this previously, even for the Three Rivers tool to have this capability, would be to hit play and actually watch the storm go through.
That will answer this question.
good answer,
Right, you want to
Yeah.
see the pain.
And I've seen it but when I,
Ready to do it.
yeah, when I've hit play before, it took, that did break it. And then I had to refresh and all that. So I don't want to get into that, but that's something, if you're feeling froggy, you can hit
Have
that.
great internet.
Go get
It's
closer.
really all about the internet, so.
Yeah.
Do with
Yeah.
high bandwidth. Yeah.
But,
So,
I could see even just showing this to. We always talk about the elected officials are gonna be really. High level, like what we're showing them. I mean, we can't get into the weeds. You could show them like, this is why shows how like our town got affected and somebody else didn't. And it's just, that's not uncommon. That's just how it happens. And those isolated pockets are what are damaging. They're saying like, why are we having all this? It just happens. I don't know.
Jake, I want to see, and I think some others here would also like to see, how do you download this data in SWIM format?
okay, so. Go out of here,
Meter share.
data downloads,
You go to data downloads.
and you can go by. I believe this is the actual RCSFMP meter sheds. So this is the aggregated GARR by shed, and then this gets a little bit larger. It takes a whole basin at a time. But if we just go just by shed, I kind of wish that this had some of the same mapping functionality, or they were kind of the same tool, but if we go in, specifically looking here, this shed. I hit next. And another thing that this tool doesn't have is that pre-selected precip events. That's one thing that the Three Rivers tool has that the view tool does not.
Sounds like we gotta get both. So now we go here, you're picking the storm we wanted.
Yeah, I'm gonna go in. Yep, now everybody knows.
Just want us to know you're-
Could be a 3W.
Just in case I forget, now everybody, I could ask someone.
Yes.
Okay, all right, I like that idea as well. You can select include the shape file, and here's where you select your format.
Yes.
Yeah, we're really getting exciting. So it has Swim 5 and PC Swim, Sam.
Where'd you do that again? Did it awful fast.
Sorry. I'm clicking out of here. Okay, so
It's in the top right-hand corner where the multiple dots are. You go back from maps. That's kind of your main dashboard, and then you go into data download. So it's kind of outside of the mapping function, data download.
yeah, here's data
We
download.
do have a question. How do you access V maps? It's all one word, V maps.
Well, I think that that's this view tool.
Okay, all right.
And that, you know, that goes back to, you know, our site for right now, when you go into the Three Rivers tool, if you scroll all the way down on the main pop-up, need something more powerful. And here's the link to the tool itself, but you need to request access from Annie. You'll get a login. One thing I had forgot is the usernames are assigned to us, I think by name. So just keep that in mind that if you're
It's not
trying
your
to,
email.
yeah, it's not, you know, maybe a username you usually use or your email. And if you forget, then you can ask Annie. So going back in here, I want to go. I'm not even going to go by PC Swim. I want to see ID and time. I'll just keep it as simple as possible. And then click submit. It's similar to the Three Rivers tool where there's kind of a waiting period. It shows you that it's working on it. This is prior downloads that I've done. And I think even potentially others that have done that you can go in and download those as well.
But what you're saying, Sam, is, hard to go about this saves the modelers a lot of front one.
Right, I mean, Khalid was asking about area weighting. So when you pick a meter shed here, the rainfall values, Khalid, are you listening?
Assuming it, yes.
So here the area weighting will be applied for you. Because this program is extracting pixel data for that meter shed. It's just going to give you one value for that entire meter shed. And that will be, the pixels which are at the boundary, they may not necessarily be fully inside or outside that meter shed boundary. The program will cut them and then do some area weighting there. So I think that's what he was trying to find out.
Okay.
So if it was a split pixel,
Yeah,
it would take
we'll
that.
know that 30% was inside and will apply that kind of weighting to in the calculation.
That'll be on the test that we pass out at the end.
Did you say though that the data that downloaded, if you use the swim format, doesn't need to be put through SOAP? Because that was something I thought we were gonna talk about, how you take this to the next piece. Are you saying it does not need that?
Right, no, you can take this downloaded file and read it into your model. Or SOAP can also read the same.
Yeah, you still need to import rainfall into SOAP. And I'm guessing you can select, is there a SOAP output on here? Let's see. That pixel. This also gives the ability to download the data by 5 minutes. I haven't played around with that at all. I don't know if anybody else has. I don't know if all precip data is available 5 minutes. So maybe that's a question we'll have to ask View. InfoWorks, PC Swim. There's not necessarily a SOAP output, but I think just getting it in, that nice format that I saw here, automatically, here's the ID of the shed, here's the date timestamp, here's the value.
Green cake. That will have pages. Same data.
Somehow it would have contributed to what you downloaded, because meter data is used to calibrate the radar pixels.
Yeah.
You're just getting an aerial weighted average of all the pixels. As he's showing, there's only one value, there's one column. You're not seeing individual values for different pixels. It has all been area weighted.
So you can, if you have a large model and you have different rain gauges in there currently, you can select this pixel for this gauge, this pixel for this one, this for this one, this for this one, or you can look at it as a whole sewer shed and download one set of preset. Yeah.
If you are doing this for like a basin, like Sawmill Run, don't go with this approach. There you'll be better off picking many pixels or all the rain gauges within Sawmill Run. You don't want to get an area weighted average for such a large watershed. But if you were just looking at a meter shed, a small meter shed, maybe, under 100 acres, then you can use this.
So this is valuable in your municipality if you're looking to model an SSO in an area, because you're really not going in that, essentially that large of an area.
Yeah.
So if you were looking at one of your communities, you wanted to find out the effect on this SSO, you could use this approach because you're really not going in that large of an area, right?
Right. I wanted to show you another way to look at it, I think, is that when you're looking at the aggregation, you're going to get different results depending on how you downloaded this data. Here's just an example. This is that same sewer shed, actually, or meter shed. So if we're looking at, I'm just going to go and I'm going to get I guess this isn't real-time data. This is after I did all my downloads. I just wanted to show you what that data looked like. So just looking at the pixel for May of 2022 at that location, if I selected just that pixel, I get a total precip of 5.67 inches. If I look at the actual rain gauge itself, which is, I think, 2 pixels away from this location, I get 6.5 inches fell at that rain gauge. Now, when I look at my GARR for that pixel, so previously it was 5.67, and it's adjusted with the rain gauge data, it goes up to 6.11 inches of precip over that time. And then if I were to select the whole shed, which is aggregating the pixels in that entire shed, I'm about 6.1. And I just wanted to,
So it starts, that show you how it adjusts by the different.
yeah, that there's different ways of looking at this data. And
Different utilities.
yeah,
And again, when you're utilizing the rainfall data, you need to understand the context by which you're using it.
So which one do you pick with is that just your engineering experience?
yeah, it depends on what you're using it for. If you're downloading this data from a model, like we were talking, like Sam mentioned, if I'm looking at just this one SSO, I'm going to select that meter shed like I did here, and that's the value I'm going to move forward with.
Okay.
But if something's not matching up, that I think this gives you the ability to look and see what happened on the raw basis and what happened on a pixel, just the radar data.
So you can do a little comparison.
Yeah. And then, yeah, if we're looking at all of Sawmill Run, yes, certainly that's many rain gauges. And you need to look at them individually, or at least pixels, or maybe it's multiple sewer sheds you're pulling from, which is probably how it would end up being.
So what you could do is, what's the difference effect of the 5.67 versus 610?
Well, at this level, like let's say this storm right here, for instance. let's say in my model or in my flow data, I saw, a crazy spike happen right there. But when I looked at my pixel data, it did not show up. And it's like, what's up? Why did this happen? And then you go and you actually look and you see, well, on the rain gauge, there was a lot of precip that fell right at that location for that rain gauge. And maybe that explains, why you'd want to go to that rain gauge instead.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we call them virtual gauge, rain gauges, right? Virtual does not mean real.
Right.
Think of them as interpolations between the rain gauges. So rain gauge data will be most accurate and virtual will be virtual, not as
Right.
accurate. So have more faith in I think, you were asking that question. So have more faith in the actual measurements. The others is sort of interpolated based on raindrops.
Focus, right.
And the other part is that doing this for a while, the only public domain rainfall data available pre-Three Rivers and Alakazam developing this system was at the county airport in West Mifflin and Pittsburgh International Airport at Moon. Unless you had a localized rain gauge, you had two spots to do infiltration inflow evaluation for, public rainfall data. Contrast that to what Jake is presenting, and you can see the technology that has evolved and the value of the rainfall gauge, the analytical tools associated with it to the region that's provided by Three Rivers and Alakazam.
You'd mentioned having your own localized gauge. In a lot of cases, we have that as well. That's part of this group. And I still think even if you did have that rain gauge, it's still useful to go back as another piece of data, redundant measurement to check certain things. Certainly helps.
Well, it seems to me one of the big things got out today is what Sam was saying, all that data that's already been put in for the model, especially for the modelers.
Yeah.
And I think in the next couple subcommittee meetings, the sanitary sewer subcommittee coming up, the combined sewer subcommittee coming up, this part we're going to utilize as a leaping point into discussing how you utilize that data. For instance, the separate sewer communities that should be in I don't want to steal Jake's thunder, but that should be doing the evaluation, characterization of their SSOs, different things like that, in preparation for the alternatives analysis, the SSO elimination plan that's due by the end of the year. Likewise, if the combined sewer communities are in the middle of their baseline due diligence period, where you're evaluating a source flow reduction project that you've performed and you're recalibrating the existing conditions model that was distributed by Three Rivers. The next two subcommittees are going to dive a little bit into the weeds, taking this data and applying it to the modeling aspects and things like that to assist the municipalities meet the next several deadlines.
Yeah, and this kind of goes along with what you were saying, Jason, was, all right, so how are we using this data? And right now, immediately, it's for the phase 2 consent orders. And if your municipality, if you're not a paragraph 8 municipality and you've passed a lateral ordinance, and that's how you're complying with this set of orders. If you're not in that scenario, then you're doing flow isolation and flow monitoring, or you're supposed to be. And in that case, you should be using these rainfall tools for that work. So that's something to keep in mind. There's a lot of resources available to help you along. Additional ways to use this, water quality and stormwater modeling, reconstructing flood events, the public engagement, as Annie had mentioned before, helping with reporting to the regulatory agencies, extreme event tracking, and then even to the point of early warning and emergency management. If we know a big storm's coming, you can see how much precip's falling and where it's falling and, you know, maybe, you know, help out on that end. That's, kind of all I had. If anybody else has any questions?
Any questions? Any questions online, Andy?
Nope.
You know, Andy alluded to the fact about you said we weren't using this alert setup. We will get something out to you within a week probably as to how to do that. Thanks, Jake. I think it was informative. I learned a few things. And we can only build on it. Like I said, we've recorded it. We'll have it posted shortly. And if you're like me, you'll go back and say, oh, I should have asked that or whatever. Please don't hesitate to send us an email. You know, we'll get Jake, or Jake can't answer it. We'll get View, we'll get it, whoever, we'll get you an answer if we can, which we probably will. And I made a lot of notes and some things we can build up, you know, some of Sam's suggestion, why do we have to go to 2 places? So we will work on it. I think it's a great tool. Again, can't thank our partners enough with the Elcasan for providing the funding so that we were able to replace 20-year-old gauges and get them up to date and their ongoing maintenance of it and everything. So it's a real partnership between communities and Elcasan through Three Rivers. So with no other questions, we'll see you at this separate source committee next week, and then we'll start telling you, okay, now that you learned how to use the rain gauge, you'll go play with it for the next week. Here's what you got to do, and bring your questions to the next meeting on how you can implement. So thank you.